Hello everybody and welcome to Programming with Ruby episode 13, Basic I/O, short for Input Output. I'm Tyler and this video is brought to you by manwithcode.com. Now, in this episode I will be defining what input output is. I will be also showing you how to access and read and write files and directories and create them and all that good stuff. So, let's get started. So what exactly is I/O, or input output? Basically, input is anything that the user gives you, any data, and output is any data that you give the user. And you'll be seeing input output in the form of files and directories in this episode, but you've actually already worked with it in the form of strings. If you remember a couple episodes ago, I showed you the method getS, which allowed you to get input from the user, and putS, which allows you to output data to the user. So, on to files. There are a couple of ways to work with files. The first is file.new. I'm going to find a variable called myFile equals file.new example.txt and R. And I will be telling you what all this means in just a second, so hold tight. Alright, so this first part is obviously the file name, and this can be either the relative path or the full path. What that means, relative path is where the file is relative to where your program is running, or the full path is where the file actually is. So maybe if you're on Windows, it would be documents and settings, and maybe it would go down to your desktop and on, or if you're on Linux it might be /home/your username, and that would be the full path versus the relative path. Alright, so now the second parameter is the mode, more specifically the mode in which you are accessing the file. In this case it's R, which is short for read. There is also W, which is short for write, and A, which is short for append. Now you can probably figure out what that means. R lets you read from the file, write lets you write to it, and A lets you write to the end of the file. Now, why would you want to do A versus W? Well, W clears the entire file before you actually get to write anything to it, where A just appends it to the end of the file, which can be useful in many cases when you want to preserve the data that's there. You can also use the postfix plus to gain both reading and writing abilities, regardless of what mode you use. Alright, so now that you know how to open a file, how do you write to it? So we're going to change that to the W, or write mode. I'm going to do myFile.putS hello world. And this may look familiar when you're working with just outputting to the terminal or the command line like this. You used putS, and the same goes for outputting stuff to files, except you have to, of course, use the file method. And let's run that and see what happens. So ruby example.rb, and go down to the desktop and open that up, and there we go, it says hello world. Quite wonderful. And in a very similar way you can read from the file, so let's change the mode to R. We just do read. Let's output that to the screen with putS so we can make sure it worked. And we run that, and hey, it says hello world. Now there's also the read lines method, which returns each line of the file in an array. I'm going to put inspect so it looks a little nicer. We're going to say hello world, hello Monica, goodbye Bob. Alright, we run that, and we get an array with hello world, hello Monica, and goodbye Bob. Wonderful. Alright, so let's see. Now there's also, for the read method, you can pass how many characters you would like to read. So I'm going to say 5, and just reads 5, which is hello. Now, it's important to point out that every time I'm done working with the file, I don't need it anymore. I use myFile.close. Now, why do I do this? Well, when you've opened a file for reading, writing, appending, whatever. The operating system gives you an iron grip on that file. No other program can use the file, only you. So it's important to release that grip so in case the user ever wants to use that file again, he can. It's important to note that you do actually release your hold on the file when the program ends, but if you ever need to open that file again while the program is running and you haven't used myfile.close, it can cause some problems. Just saying. Alright. Now, I mentioned earlier that file.new was only one of a couple of ways of opening a file. Now the second way is by using open. So file.open, which is exactly the same, except while you're using the file, you are in a code block. And also, when the code block is over, it closes the file for you automatically. And as you can see, I did something wrong. Oops, sorry, forgot the channeling pipe. And it does exactly the same, it's just in the form of a code block. And it's a personal preference, depending on what you want to use. It's up to you, I don't really care. And sometimes, you know, it's upsides and downsides, but it's up to you to figure out. Now, this is really all I'm going to cover in this episode, so if you would like to learn more about files, and there's a lot more methods that files have, go to rubydoc.org/core-1.8.7 index.html and look up the file class and the IO class, and that will show you a lot more methods that they have. So, yeah, check that out. On to directories. Alright, so a very simple operation would be to create a directory using dir.mkdir, and if you'll notice, all operations dealing with directories have to are in the dir class. So mkdir hello world, and if we run that and I go down to my desktop, there we go, we have a folder or directory, depending on what you like to call it, called hello world. Cool. Now you can get an array with all the directories or with all the files and directories in the current directory with dir.entries. So, and you have to pass what directory you're talking about, and just the dot is short for the current directory. And there we go, we have a list of everything. Double dots is short for the directory above the current one, and there we go. And if you want to specify a folder one down, you have to name it, so a folder called rbtd, and there we go, we get the output for that right there. Very cool. Now there's another method similar to entries called dir.forEach, which does exactly the same thing, but it takes it in the form of a code block. So do entry, just do putS entry, and exactly the same output. Again, personal preference, whichever one you want to do. And like files, that's really all I'm going to cover, not a lot. So if you'd like to learn more, go to http://ruby-doc.org/core-1.8.7 I'm sorry, index.html, and look up the dir class. And these URLs will be in the video description, so if you don't want to remember them or type them up now, that's where they'll be, so just letting you know. Now, this actually brings us to the end of the episode. I know, such a sad time. I'm crying too. If you like these videos, please do not refrain from donating. They take a lot of work to make. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about anything, you can leave a comment on this page or email me at tyler@manwithcode.com. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.